Early this morning, 19-year-old Ghulet Mohammed returned back home to the United States after a long month of detention in Kuwait. Mohammed was a U.S. citizen, is a U.S. citizen, raised in Virginia. After traveling overseas to visit family and study Arabic, Mohammed was denied entry back to the United States because his name appeared on the no-fly list. According to his own account, this U.S. citizen was taken from the Kuwaiti airport to an unidentified location, handcuffed and blindfolded, and was then beaten and tortured for a week by Kuwaiti officials at the specific behest and request of the U.S. government. Following his enhanced interrogations, Mohammed was transferred to a detention facility for weeks while his family back in Virginia sought legal remedies to bring him home. When he finally arrived back in the States this morning, he was interviewed by the FBI again without a lawyer. So here we have a U.S. citizen traveling abroad, denied re-entry into the United States, tortured for a week, and detained for a few more, all by the authority of the United States government. Mohammed's lawyers are now suing the Department of Justice. Now, we don't know all the details for all the details of Mohammed's story are true. We do know that the U.S. has employed torture as recently as 2 years ago and is using indefinite detention to this day. President Bush admitted it. And many civil liberties groups allege that the no-fly list is merely a tool by which the U.S. government can justify the interrogation and detention of certain individuals abroad by foreign government officials. And it's likely the U.S. turns a blind eye to harsh interrogation tactics carried out by these foreign officials. This is where we are today in our world on terror. Think back for a moment to America pre-Bush. What would our reactions be to a U.S. citizen tortured and detained against his will? What would our reaction be if this torture was perpetrated by the U.S. government? There seems to be a great apathy or desensitization settling over the American spirit. Over the last decade, a fundamental shift has occurred in America. We now routinely sacrifice human rights on a mass scale in the public eye in the pursuit of security. And this shift continues unnoticed. It's not reported in the mainstream media. It's not debated in the halls of Congress. It's quietly creeping. We've forgotten the words of one of our founders, Benjamin Franklin, when he said, "They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Sure, this happened before. One day our nation woke up and realized we interned U.S. citizens into concentration camps. We did it to Americans of Japanese ancestry during World War II. Or we ruined the lives of thousands of citizens by way of a manufactured witch hunt against communists when our nation was hypnotized by McCarthyism in the 1950s. Harkening back to that day, Republican Peter King, the new chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, is launching investigations as we speak into American Muslim communities for similar un-American activities. This is happening. U.S. citizens are being detained and tortured, and we need to be aware of it, because if we aren't, we'll repeat the mistakes of the past, or worse. The American writer Milton Mayer wrote a book entitled "They Thought They Were Free." It was about the slow creep of the rise of Nazism in Germany and why good German citizens did nothing to stop it. Mayer, in his book, he was a journalist in Chicago, and right after World War II he went over to Germany and interviewed 10 good Germans, people who never joined the Nazi Party, didn't participate in the atrocities, and yet didn't speak out or try and stop anything. A college professor, a baker, a variety of people. And here's what they told him. He's actually, in this case, quoting a college professor that he interviewed. This fellow said, "What happened here was the gradual habituation of the people, little by little, to being governed by surprise, to receiving decisions deliberated in secret, to believing that the situation was so complicated that the government had to act on information which the people could not understand, or so dangerous that even if the people could understand it, it could not be released because of national security. And one day, the world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world you were in at all. The forms are all there, they're all untouched, all reassuring, the houses, the shops, the jobs, the meal times, the visits, the concerts, the cinema, the holidays, but the spirit, which you never noticed because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, the spirit is changed. And now you live in a world of hate and fear. And the people who hate and fear don't even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. Now you live in a system which rules without responsibility, even to God. Just because everything looks the same around us doesn't mean our spirit remains intact. Let's not let the story of Ghulam Mohammed be ignored. This is a wake-up moment for America. Let's not let the story of those in Gitmo be ignored. That was a campaign promise of President Obama. As long as our human rights abuses continue, our spirit will rot away, and this nation will continue to drift in directions none of us would ever want. Let's stand up for the ideals of the Enlightenment on which this country was founded. Government of, by, and for the people, and a proper respect for those people's human rights. And reject the fear peddled by the Bushes and the Cheneys. We are better than that fear. We are not a fearful nation. When Franklin Roosevelt said we have nothing to fear but fear itself, that was the human dynamic.